The House has passed a bill that would raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour, and this is not an immediate threat because it won't pass in the Senate, but still, this is something to get the economically ignorant people all excited and then all upset when it doesn't pass because they truly don't know what the problem is with raising the minimum wage. And so I'm going to go in depth with the economics of it because apparently John Doyle, holder of one high school diploma with AP macro and microeconomics under his belt, knows more about how to run an economy than the Democrats. And that's not to say I'm an expert because I'm not. If you ask me, hey, break down the weighted average cost of capital for a firm based on the updated corporate tax rates. Yeah, okay, buddy. Let me stick to just owning libs over here, right? But seriously, minimum wage is one of the most basic, comprehensible concepts in economics. And that doesn't mean that we're brilliant for understanding it. It just means that Democrats are either very dumb or very hungry for power. I'll let that be your call. So do stay tuned.
John Doyle in. Heck off, Commie.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Heck Off, Commie. Look who's back. Some of you thought I took her down because they demonetized me for it. That actually offended me. They demonetized me anyways, my friends. I'm not cucking on the rifle. I'll add more guns if you want. You know, the M1 was just getting some work done. But to celebrate, I'm going to empty a round from the chamber at the end of the video once we're done with all the boring economic stuff because nothing says USA like that sound. And if you know what sound I'm talking about, you have a high IQ. But a couple more things before we get started. Firstly, I apologize for the gap in content. I was very sick, still kind of am, but at least now my voice is somewhat usable. And since you asked, it wasn't very fun because I was just sitting around waiting for my body to fight this off. I couldn't talk, which meant I couldn't make videos, so I tried to hang out on Twitter a bit, and this is your cue to follow me, of course. And I asked you guys, I was like, hey, do you guys want to see a video on the minimum wage? You know, I know it's kind of boring stuff, but I'll do it if you want, and it'll work better for me right now because it's pretty easy stuff, and I'm sick, and you guys were like, yes, do it, and so I will, because I work for you guys. But I was just so bored. I was just trying to tweet things out so you know that I wasn't dead. So I decided to remind everybody that men couldn't get pregnant. Fairly simple, right? Evidently not, because people got mad. People started blowing up my DMs, and I was like, holy crap. And so since I had some time, I just conducted an experiment in which I tried to get pregnant, and I really wasn't sure how to go about that since I don't have a uterus. And so I was just trying to sit there just to will myself into getting pregnant and just identify as pregnant, see if it worked, but I don't think it did, but if it did, we will soon know. But anyways, on to the minimum wage, on to the meat and potatoes, because no one cares about me being sick. So firstly, we need to explain the relationship between an employer and an employee. And given that these relationships exist, we have to ask why. Why is there a relationship between employers and employees? And the relationship exists because these individuals have problems that can be solved or at least reduced by utilizing each other. And so the problem of the person that's seeking the job is that they need money. It's like, okay, well, why do they need money? Because they have to buy food, pay bills, etc. So let's elaborate on that briefly. So let's say that you are a tailor. And his name is John C. And you make custom clothes for a living, right? And so it probably took you a while to develop that to where it is now because of your hard work and dedication. You can now make a living on this skill of yours. So let's say you want to buy a loaf of bread, and so you go to the baker and you're like, hello, Mr. Baker. And his name is John C. I'd like some bread. And then he's like, yes. What do you have in exchange? And you're like, I'm a tailor. And he's like, oh, you're a tailor? What are you, gay? Get out of my bakery. That's a joke because it's not in Colorado. And so what he actually says is, I'll give you 3 loaves of bread if you make me a shirt. And then you say, make it 4. And then the baker's like, okay, 4 loaves, you have a deal. And then you both fulfill your end of the bargain. Everyone's happy because you both consented to the transaction. And if you weren't satisfied, you would not have consented. And then you go your separate ways. Right, so money is used to expedite this process. Money is a physical manifestation of value that we exchange. If I shovel snow for my neighbor in the winter for $25 a driveway, I'm being paid for the value of my labor. I now have that $25. I can take it to a coffee shop, buy a hot chocolate for a few dollars, whatever. And they will honor that because the money represents value. And then they will use that to buy inventory or cover labor expenses, And then bear in mind that if some guy has a snowplow attached to his truck, he doesn't have to work as hard to clear the driveway. And so he might only charge $20. And then my neighbor might say, well, hey, John, this guy's only charging $20. So unless you lower your price, we're just going to switch services. And then I might say to myself, there's no way I'm going to go shovel a whole driveway for under $20. So forget about that. Or I might say, well, I haven't made enough to afford a truck or a snowplow. So all I really have at my disposal is my physical labor. That's my only bargaining chip. And because of that, in order to stay competitive and keep earning money, I'll have to accept less money for the work. The man with the snowplow and the truck bought those things with money that he earned working and providing value to others, and then he reinvested that value into his business to become more efficient. So not only is he capable of manual labor, but he can also use his capital to clear driveways faster than I can, and because it takes him less time and effort, he can charge less in order to stay competitive. I don't have those because I haven't earned enough money yet, so I can either complain and pretend that it's my neighbor's fault that I'm not getting paid more, and then not take the job, and then proceed to go home and bitch about it online, or I can accept that it's my responsibility to make myself worth more, and in order to do that, I'm going to have to work. And this goes back to the reason for these relationships. My neighbor needs his driveway cleared, and I need money, and so we make a deal. And if someone else can do the same job that I can do for less money, it's irrational for my neighbor to keep paying me instead of the less expensive guy. And so this is somewhat related to a misconception that leftists have about businesses, which is that they make money by raising prices and exploiting customers and workers and whatever. So in order for a business to become profitable, they need their revenue to exceed their costs. So now to do that, you can either increase the revenue of the business to above the cost, or you can decrease the cost of the business to below the revenue. Any business can raise its prices to try and increase revenue, but it won't work because people will just go patronize the business that didn't raise its prices, and now you're losing revenue. The best ways for businesses to make a profit is to cut costs. When you cut costs, you increase what's left when you subtract costs from revenue, granting your profit. And so how do you cut costs? You be efficient with resources, you invest in capital, you innovate, etc. So snowplow guy, he cuts his costs by getting the plow to do the work for him, and now he can charge less to compete. So this works out well for businesses because in order for businesses to survive, they have to provide the best, most efficiently produced product at the lowest possible cost to us in order to survive against their competitors. And so this is how prices are determined for goods and services. The goal of a price is not to exploit customers. The goal of a price is to sell the most units at the greatest cost to achieve the optimal revenue. And so if you don't do that, eventually you're going to be losing revenue. So, it's better to sell 15 computers at $750 than 10 computers at $1,000. Prices for labor are determined in a similar way. When I pay for your labor, I'm weighing the value of your skill and your productivity. If your skills are not special, there's a high supply of people with your skills, I can pay you less for your skills because you're competing with other people that want the job as well, and they'll agree to work if you won't, and so you'll have to work for less money in order to receive any money at all. This is demonstrated in the basic supply and demand graph. If more people can do the thing that you do, you're not going to make a lot of money for that thing. This is why we seldom hear dermatologists complaining about pay increases. And so when we raise the federal, that's important, by the way, to, in this case, $15 per hour, what you've done is you've changed the amount that you will be paid to $15 an hour, provided that you enter into an employment contract. So you being entitled to $15 an hour doesn't mean anything if you can't get a job, and no one's obligated to hire you. And since you've artificially increased the price of your labor, there's going to be unemployment. And as Thomas Sowell says, the real minimum wage is $0, big guy, because you'll be out of the job pouting and reminding yourself that you're definitely worth $15 an hour. The thing that you have to accept, and I know it's not nice, but it's true. You have to accept that not everybody is equal. Not everybody deserves to be paid a lot of money. And this is why artificially increasing the price of labor will always cause increased unemployment. Always. Excuse me. And the more ambitious your proposal is, if it's $15 an hour, if it's $18 an hour, the higher it gets, the more people you're going to price out of the job market. Because by setting $15 an hour as the minimum wage, a person now has to be able to produce at the very minimum $15 an hour in profit for a business. And if they can't do that, then the business is losing money on them and they will be fired. Not everyone is capable of doing this. I mean, I know I worked in fast food for 3 years. You would not believe how many people just could not do it, or if they could do it, they were doing it inadequately. And it blew my mind. I was just watching these people. And I started that job. I was 16. I was getting paid $7.50 an hour with no prior experience, and I was excited about that because it was 25 cents more than the minimum wage, and actually about $1.34 more than he could have paid me, because in my state you can pay minors 85% of the minimum wage. And so I did my job well, and guess what happened? I got a few raises without asking. I never asked for a raise because I really liked the job. I liked most of the people that worked there. My boss was really cool. And so these were all things that I considered, because it's I could go somewhere else and make more money, but then I won't get to talk about politics with my boss when we're opening the store in the morning. Or something like that. That was a lot of fun for me, and so I stayed there. And eventually, after I graduated high school, I needed more money, so I told my boss, hey, big guy, I need more money or else I'm going to go find another job. It's not personal. He got that. So he was like, would you be willing to take on more responsibility? And I was like, yes, because I know that the price of my labor is determined by my productivity. And so I ended up getting a substantial raise, but I also had to work harder, which was fine because I needed the money. I remember during the peak of it, I'd wake up at 6:30. It's below zero outside. I'm freezing to death. And I'd go drive 25 minutes to one of the stores. And then I'd go do the cash and the opening inventory. And then I'd drive 15 minutes to my main store, do the same thing. And then I'd open that store and work there until about 3. And so that was rough, but I drank a lot of coffee, listened to a lot of Blink-182, so it was fine. I had fun with it, but let's say that it wasn't fun. Let's say that I became resentful because I'm like, why am I getting up at 6:30? I drive half hour to the store that I really don't even work at, do the accounting, all that stuff, and then I drive to another store, do the same stuff there. I prep food, open the rest of the store, all in under about 30 minutes, ideally, and I'm still getting paid under 15 an hour. It's like, what the hell? My boss, who's also the owner, isn't even coming in today. I've seen the numbers because I'm in charge of tracking them now. Why am I not getting paid more for doing all this? And the reason is because it's not my store. Neither of the stores belong to me. Those aren't my tomatoes. It's not my capital. My boss had to work to earn enough money to buy the capital for his business. And without the capital, it wouldn't exist. And without his knowledge of how to operate the business, it would go under. It's his risk, therefore he gets paid more. It's pretty simple. That's the reward for taking the risk of entrepreneurship. You risk everything you've invested. You can take the more secure path. You can just go work for somebody else. But because you've opted to bear less risk, you will reap less reward. But we need people to take the risk. It's that risk that brings us great products at low prices. And so we have to incentivize that risk taking by allowing people to keep more of the benefits than just somebody that works for them using their capital. And the left will say, oh, but it's not fair. These are poverty wages. First, let's note that poverty wages, that talking point, is just a 21st century version of the Marxist rhetoric of the capitalist class exploiting the poor. It's just not true. They're at that job for a reason. If the reason didn't exist, they'd go elsewhere. And when you eliminate that job with your well-intentioned legislation that raises the wage, you're going to force them to explore other options that they clearly weren't even interested in the first place. There's nothing compassionate about taking people's jobs away from them because you think you know better. This is a classic example of the Marxist false consciousness theory that, oh, well, they don't recognize they're being oppressed, so it's my job to remind them or to stop the oppression. That's a nice little theory, but you're actually depriving people of their right to earn what they're worth, thereby making it illegal for unskilled workers to exist, since they won't be able to be workers anymore if they're unskilled. And they'll say, well, you can't live in any major city with a minimum wage job. Yeah, you want to know why? Because it's a major city. People want to live there. That means higher price because higher demand. And, are you dumb? It's like, why should you be able to? These liberals are trying to help themselves out. They want to go live in New York City but keep working at Tim Hortons. Yeah. Okay, buddy, but herein lies the problem with this happening at the federal level. Big city companies can afford a $15 an hour minimum wage better than smaller companies in less densely populated parts of the country. In fact, big companies in general can afford it better, and they even lobby for this legislation because they know that it'll put competitors out of business. And so it's like, oh yeah, guess what? Everyone in New York got a raise, and then that money's just going to be absorbed into the housing market, you idiot. Increase the wages of everybody. Housing demand goes up. Uh-oh, the price of housing is now up. And then you're back at square one. It's, oh, well, John, the market will correct itself. Yeah. And then it's back to a similar equilibrium. So again, nothing is solved. Now, people are just out of the job, but it's okay because you feel like you're a good person because you liberated them from their oppression that they didn't even realize.
I'm a good person, yes, it's true. I'm a good person, better than you.
Oh, well, it won't cause unemployment. The prices will just increase a little bit, but that's okay. Yeah, okay, price goes up, demand decreases, revenue decreases. Now costs have to be cut. People get laid off. Maybe some people benefit from the wage increase, but others aren't so lucky because they're out of the job now. If price isn't raised, okay, there's still going to be unemployment and less production, therefore less efficiency, because marginal producers will be forced to cut their labor costs by firing people. There is virtually no escape from the fact that increasing the minimum wage will increase unemployment. What's more unemployment? More unemployment means more funding for the welfare system, which means higher taxes. Oh, there goes your wage boost. All government involvement in the market is unnatural and always has unintended consequences. The only way to truly raise your wages without these consequences is to better yourself. Learn skills, learn a trade, figure something out. High wages require high productivity. High productivity depends on machines, investments, capital investment, and those depend on the creative ingenuity of individual men, which requires a system that protects the rights and freedoms of individuals in order for them to manifest said creative ingenuity. It isn't the government's job to decide for the market what you're worth, because when it's inexorably wrong, it's going to make things worse for everybody else. The market is the best decider of value, not the government that, by the way, is only getting involved to expand its power, not the employee, not the employer. the market. To reject the market is to reject objectivity, which, in case you haven't noticed, seems to be a recurring theme for our friends on the left, rejection of objectivity. And, it's a relatively free market, big guy. If you were really worth $15 an hour, frankly, you'd be getting $15 an hour. Cena goes for the clothesline. Wait a minute, Cena ducks it. He's got him up. Attitude adjustment. John Cena. Excuse me. I said I was going to show you guys the rifle. So, the truth is, I get a lot of online from fascists and communists, people like that, and they'll say a lot of stuff. But the only thing they've ever said that's really gotten under my skin was, "Oh, Doyle, he's got Grandpappy's M1 on the wall. He doesn't know anything about that rifle. I bet that it'd break his shoulder," stuff like that. Real tough guys when they're behind their keyboard. The truth is, my grandpa was a World War II veteran. He served as a lieutenant colonel under George Patton, but this is not his rifle. This is my rifle. I bought it a couple years ago because I respect the history behind it. I respect the innovation in its design. I love this rifle. It's authentic. I have a piece of history, and it's just fantastic. But so for all of those people that clearly know nothing about weapons like these and also tend to not know anything about what actual fascism is, I just like to play you a little sound real quick, because the thing is, history says that when you're fighting actual fascism, you don't hear, "I need a safe space. It's a white male. Impeach the mother..." No. That's not what you hear. This is the true sound of fighting fascism, ladies and gentlemen. God bless America. Oh my God, you want to go just clear a trench or something. Oh man. Well, thank you so much for watching, and may God bless America.